everybody. This is the Kicking the Tires podcast. I'm Mason. Today I've got with me Luke
Hey,
and Frank.
Hey,
Uh, well, I guess to get this episode started off with, tell us a little bit about the cars you got.
well, right now I have a 69 Rally Sport Super Sport Camaro and a 71 Firebird. Uh, and I just sold my 68 Camaro.
Okay. Between the two, what's your favorite?
Right now it has to be the Firebird.
Okay.
That was my first car, so, it's nice.
so your first car you ever got? Like that's your
My first car was a 77 Firebird, so it's close.
okay.
It's close. But, yeah.
And what kind of state is this in? Is it a project? Is it done? Is it restored? Is it original?
Firebird, it's restored now. When I bought it, it was a basket case, no motor, transmission, no drive shaft, no interior, no body. I basically bought a frame and the title. Don't ever do that. Do not buy a project car ever.
Well, that's probably a bad thing for you, Luke.
I'm already 2 feet in.
Are you? I'll tell you, you have to stick with it. If you're a procrastinator, do not buy a project car. Because, like my Camaro I've got now, I've got to hit it every weekend. Every weekend, or I'll never get done.
You definitely have to have a lot of determination when it comes to these old cars, for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So it is a project, but how far along is it? Is it running? Is it driving? Is it the state you want it to be?
Well, the Firebird's done. The Camaro, hopefully I'll get fire on it in about a week or two. But what I did is I bought a good car, I thought, but the undercarriage was terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to restore it and redo that and redo the engine.
So what did you end up doing for an engine for the Firebird?
The Firebird. The Firebird, what I did for that is I was looking for engines.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was like $1,500, $2,000 for one that need to be rebuilt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I found a car. And I found a car with the motor had 70,000 miles on it. So I took it out, went through it. So $600 later, I've got an engine, transmission, and I sold the car, so I got most of my money back. So that's the cheapest thing on that Firebird. I tell you,
What kind of engine?
400 with
Nice.
a 400 turbo transmission.
I bet that's nice.
Yeah, we can't compete with these new cars, but it does all right.
I don't care if we can compete with the new cars or not. Just hearing that loud old motor just going down the road's amazing to me.
Yeah, it's something. I enjoy it.
Where'd you end up finding your Firebird or your Camaro? I mean,
Which one's
the '69.
the 69? It was a friend of my wife. He's actually had it since the 80s, and I really can't blame him for everything on it because what had happened is it was a true RSSS, but it was a rust bucket. So in the 80s, what they did is they took the 12-bolt rear end out of it, the motor transmission, and was going to junk the car. And then this guy bought it. And once he bought it, he redone it with GM quarters and GM fenders, but the undercarriage, the body shop kind of just done whatever.
Yeah, well, I can understand that. I mean, the undercarriage, especially around Indiana, is probably about the worst thing with the salt on the road.
Oh yeah, it was terrible. Frame rails, floor pans. It was terrible.
So how'd you get your start in all this? You mentioned buying a project car is a horrible idea. You never recommended, but obviously you subscribed to that and you did that.
Right.
So how did you find yourself in that situation? Just you saw the car and couldn't help it?
Yeah, well, I tell you, my first car, if we back up, my first car was a 60, well, not my first car, but first car restored was a 68 Camaro. And I wanted a good body and a bad engine because I plan on just putting the engine in and go. Well, I found one with a brand new engine, brand new transmission, and a terrible body. So,
Did the opposite first. Yeah.
yes. So I had to learn on that one. But of course, I'm a welder by trade, so replacing quarter panels and all that stuff's easy to me.
Mm-hmm.
But the Firebird was a different animal because when you're taking 4 front seats and weld them together and make 2 front seats, and then you got so much money in it, you have to repost your interior yourself because your wife says you put enough in it.
Learn to do a lot yourself then.
You learn to do a lot. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, if you have the patience, go for it. But if you don't, because it's gonna test you, and it's trying. I mean, I mean, there's days like I'll start on one project and I want to do something else because this one here is such a pain, but I just stay with it.
Yeah. Well, and I know that I heard from an old man one time that you should really buy one that runs and drives first before you get a project, because at the end of the day, if you get mad at the project instead of throwing a wrench through the window like I would do, you can take and drive the other one and go have some fun and get your stress burnt out.
Yes, because I mean, buy the best project you can. Do that because I mean, I've got a friend right now who's got a '70 Camaro,
Mm-hmm.
and he's had it 35 years. It has not changed at all. He hasn't done nothing to it. And I mean, it'll wear on you. That's why there's so many project cars for sale.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's how I ended up with that blue fastback of mine, is that it had been through three different owners because each one had finally gotten to a point where they were just so tired with having to take and put more money into it and get it to where it's at. And me being the last guy, I only have about maybe $1,500, $2,000 worth of parts left to put on it. And it's just really a radio and speakers.
Wow. Yeah, yeah. And that's what you should do because I mean that way you can enjoy it and add things later. I mean, when you get one like I've got, I mean, you're talking sometimes years. I mean, the Firebird, I think it took me on and off 3 years, but that was me working on it every weekend,
Mhm.
and car shows.
Yeah. No. What was the most challenging thing between the two and three restorations you're doing so far? What was the most challenging thing you had to do?
I really think it's the Camaro, I mean, the '69, because with the Firebird, I cut everything off. I cut quarter panels off and everything so you can kind of put it back in order.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with this Camaro, it's got GM quarter panels on it and it's got GM fenders and all that. So I didn't want to cut everything apart. So you got to kind of work like putting the outer wheel tubs in.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when the quarters are off, they're easy. When the quarters are in, they're hard. They're a pain. But I'd say the outer wheel tub was the worst.
See, I thought the painting probably would have been the worst one, because I'm okay with a spray bomb can, but I can't do very good laying a coat of paint down.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you something else about this. You talk about hard. This '69, the guy used a lot of tar on everything, so everything's tarred. And well, I've got to clean everything and paint it, repaint it because I'm me. Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty bad. But like paint, I do everything but the paint. I let somebody else do the paint.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was going to be one of my questions, because there's some guys out there that are willing to take and do that, but there's also guys out there that there's some things that they know is beyond what they really want to do, and it's better just to sub it out at the end of the day.
Well, and I think you could paint. It might not be show quality, but the thing of it is then you've got to buy spray guns and this and that, and it's just, to me it's just easier just take it somewhere and get a shot.
So speaking of like different qualities and stuff like that, when you were going into these, what did you define as like your goal? Was it just a functional car? Was it you want to take it to shows? Do you want to be able to not race it, but like, drive it fast and fun?
Well, I mean, I wanted to go to shows. It's not going to win top tier at a show, but I mean, it wins awards, and I like driving them. Like this last weekend, I think I put it like 115 miles on my car, and I know a lot of guys with cars, they don't.
Mhm.
But I mean, they're just meant to be drove.
I think that's the one thing that always kind of burns me up, is you hear a guy that's got, and this is an out of the world number, but a guy that's got $100,000 in a car, which that's possible.
Yeah.
But then they say, well, I drive it a lot. Oh, yeah. How many miles you got on it? Well, it's been done for about 5 years, so I got about 2,000 miles. Like, you ain't driving
Yeah.
that car.
Yeah.
That's sitting in your garage. That's a princess. That ain't doing nothing.
I seen a guy come to the show once, and he had a Camaro on the trailer, and he pulled the Camaro out of the trailer, and it was just mint. I mean, it had the little cardboard on a radio from the factory and all that. I'm like, come on,
Mhm.
that car's not being driven.
They're tools. And at the end of the day, We all have fun with them our own way. Some people race them. Some people have something nice to drive around or to show off at other shows. And whenever you go into these things, you kind of have to put that in your mind too. Like you mentioned, the paint. You knew that your quality of paint wasn't going to be up to your standards, so you found someone who could do it up to your standards. But then you went and did the interior. Are you happy with how the interior turned out? Is that the quality that you wanted out of it, or do you think something you'll readdress later on with a professional?
No, the quality on the interior is, I mean, it's just as good as ones
Mhm.
I've seen. Uh, but like the final body work and paint, that's too tedious for me. Because I mean, even my trunk, I mean, when I welded my trunk up, then bonding over it and sanding and bonding and sanding and this and that. I mean, I spent 3 weeks on it, and I'm like, I couldn't imagine doing a whole car. It just, that's not me.
There's some of them guys out there though that just have the finesse about it. It blows my mind, but I guess when you have the talent, you got the talent for it.
Yeah, I do dry. I've done drywall, and I'm not a mudder. I know what I can do.
Oh, I could probably waste a lot of Bondo before I'd realize I just need to stop doing it.
Yeah.
Now, so you mentioned earlier that the previous owner put a lot of tar on it. Now, some people may not know why would someone do that?
The weather code it, because what they did. This is what they did was terrible. And like I said, this was the '80s. This car wasn't worth nothing in the '80s. And so what they did is they left all the rusty floor pans, and then just put tar and threw sheet metal on top of that, and then tarred over that. So it was terrible.
So they were just patching a problem and hoping it didn't get worse.
Right.
Why you
And,
putting the
and
tar on there?
it got worse. It got worse.
Yeah.
Because as bad as my other two cars were, this one here, I had to put floor pans and the seat pan in it and inner rocker panels.
Mhm.
So it was pretty bad.
That's probably the bane of every car guy is rust. Just rust. It's a cancer.
Yeah, and you don't know what you're getting until you start tearing into one.
Well, because every car, especially like, with the Mustangs, they were always bad about their shock towers getting rotted out. And I know Corvettes, the bird cage tends to have issues. Every car's got their magic little spot that every guy will tell you don't buy one if it ain't got good shock towers because it's going to be a hard thing to fix.
Yeah. GM guys are pretty lucky; they don't have to deal with that. But yeah,
I wish that was true. I got a little bit of rust on my Corvette.
oh really?
Right at the radiator core support, someone over here put a screwdriver through it one day because he's like, I wonder if I could poke that, and just right through it.
Well, I mean, his car is pretty much a rolling tetanus shot, so I mean, I don't know if I want to be too close.
If I ever got my shot, you'd be fine.
What year is it?
It's a 70.
Is it 70?
Mhm.
Oh, so you got a chrome front bumper then.
I wouldn't go that far. It's supposed to,
It's
yes.
supposed to have a chrome front bumper.
Current bumper is painted on. I didn't do that.
Yeah.
It's literally like the Rhino liner, the textured paint. I'm like, oh, I mean, that's one way to do it. It's a black one, and it's painfully obvious that it was just painted on.
There's some guys that do that though. There's your barnyard fixes, and then there's your professionals.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so how mechanical are you?
Well, I'm learning that one a little bit. I can figure it out. It just takes some time, and I'm really wanting to build up my skills. So that's kind of why I got a project car. I didn't want someone else's completed project that all I'd have to do is drive it. Don't get me wrong, I like driving it, but I wanted to learn a lot of skills. So you mentioned doing the interior. I'm probably going to do the interior of my car as well. It's way down the road. I got far bigger fish to fry, like the engine and stuff like that needs to be replaced.
Right.
But even the paint and stuff, I'm interested in trying it out. We'll see if I end up keeping whatever work I put down, but I want to learn all that and get better with it.
Well, and speaking of projects, because like where he's got two of them, what's a good starting point money wise? Because you can't have it all up front. It's not like a project you can't get done in a week. So it's kind of you can spread your money out over time. But what's something good to have in the beginning, just from the get go?
Well, and it all depends on the car too. Because for instance, now I have a '71 Firebird. All right, it's just like a Camaro. A dashboard for it's probably changed since then. A dashboard for a '71 Camaro is about $250. A dashboard for a '71 Firebird is about $1,000. So, it depends on your car because I know like quarter panels. Quarter panels for a 68 Camaro, 69 Camaro, $329 for full quarter panels. For a Firebird, $550.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it gets expensive quick.
It definitely, I think it does depend on the popularity of the car because, some of them are starting to make strides towards the getting to be more popular now. Like I know the Firebird's picking up a lot in the last couple of years. I see them all the time. But, these reproduction parts manufacturers, they're just trying to stick with the guys that are big like Camaro and Mustang and all the Dodge stuff like that. There are some guys out there that do the offhand cars, but I know it probably can be tough finding some stuff.
Yeah, and you know what though? The older I get, the more I appreciate other cars like AMCs, like the
Mhm.
Javelins. I mean, I would love to have one because it's something you don't see a lot of.
Hmm.
But this is done. 69 Camaro, I'm done after this.
You've met your match. You
Yeah,
got
I've
it
learned
done.
my lesson, I think.
Well, are you more brand loyal? Or do you like the General Motors cars, or are you a little bit of everything?
No, I'm everything because actually the day before I bought that Firebird, I looked at a 72 or 73 CUDA,
Mm-hmm.
but it made the Firebird look good, and it was about 10 times the price. So
Yeah.
there you go. But no, I've like uh, I had a Challenger, so I've had a Challenger. I've had GMs. I haven't owned Fords. Well, I have owned Ford trucks, but I mean, no, I'm not brands. I mean, I own anything I like. Audis,
Mhm.
whatever.
So someone else getting into this, getting into restoring a project or buying their first project, something like that. What are some skills that you would deem essential for getting in? Or at least if you don't know how to do it, being prepared to learn a lot about it. Would it be the mechanical portions or is it just like what to look for in buying a project?
Um, Common sense.
That sounds like a big
Common
problem.
sense.
That's going to be
Not
hard.
done here.
But I mean, look, your first project, you probably are going to get in over your head because you think you can do everything. Then you're going to realize it. Because even me, I've been a welder for 30 something years, and even now, I have to scratch my head on some things to get them to work. I mean, like right now, I'm fighting getting a fender and a door lined up because I
Mhm.
put an aftermarket hinge on the bottom, and I didn't change nothing else. I didn't open the door. I didn't change the hinge. I didn't change the striker. I just took one off and put it on, and it's a bear trying to get just everything right back. So
Oh, I know that pain because I had to take the door off of one of my coupes, and it took forever to take, and you'd have to keep taking and loosening that hinge on the bottom back up and pushing the door up just enough to match, tightening it up, and hoping when you shut the door it was just perfect. It's minuscule things that can really throw off body work
oh
in that
yeah,
kind of sense.
oh yeah. But I'm glad to see you young guys getting into it too, though, because I mean, that was our social media. When I was 16, that was our social media. I
Mhm.
mean, meeting, cruising and meeting our friends and going out and Friday nights working on our cars and, somebody put a cam in it Friday night and go racing Saturday.
Blow it up on Sunday.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the only thing that I love the new cars.
Mhm.
The only thing I hate about the new cars is the guys don't get to work on them and experience like us old timers did on our old
Mhm.
cars.
It is a very different time, and you're talking about how powerful these new cars are, and it's incredible. They're rolling off with much higher horsepower numbers than a lot of these old cars did.
Seems a lot of these new guys aren't really going more towards working on their motors and stuff. I mean, there's some stuff you can add on to it, but it seems like a lot of these new guys are going more towards exterior modifications, like they're putting on the big fins or getting tires that kind of set squat. Seems like they're more about putting their money towards the outside of the car than they are putting it into the motor and trying to make it unique in that sense. Take it out to the drag strip and run it, and all that.
Yeah.
Well, think about it with social media, they can't feel the power of a car if you've got a new cam in it or anything like that. But if you go and put huge wheels on your car, someone's going to see that. I'm like, oh, they put some money into that. Even if it is just the wheels, it's all you changed.
Yeah. And go back to the horsepower. I'm a project of the 80s. So GT Mustangs, the Fox body Mustangs. I remember when, 87, 88, where they had 225 horsepower or something like that.
Kind of close.
Yeah, fastest thing on the road. And then I knew a couple guys put nitrous on theirs.
Mhm.
So that was it. And now you bring those guys now, and anything could beat them. But back then, I mean, that was just the baddest thing on the road.
Yeah.
Well, and back in the day too, I'm sure it's guys could take, like you said, they could tear their car down on Monday, have it built back by Wednesday, and be out at the racetrack on Friday. I mean, nowadays with all this computer stuff, unless you got somebody that's just a computer whiz and knows what they're doing with that stuff, you can't really fool with these cars too much. It's almost like you can't be a true mechanic anymore. You almost need to take it to somebody else that knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the computers keep you locked out on a lot of them, but uh, I don't know. I love the new cars, but I mean, there's something about taking your car out on the back roads for a cruise. Like me putting 100 miles on my car. I mean, you smell the gas and the wind, and when you're doing 55 miles an hour, you feel like you're doing 55 miles an hour.
Mhm.
My Tacoma, I can do 80 and feel like I'm doing 20.
Yeah.
So you can, yeah.
I mean, I'd give up a lot of modern amenities just to take and be able to go out there, start up that big block 351 I got, and just sit there and smell the gasoline. And just,
Yeah.
I love it. It just, it's one of them things. It's a passion. And if you really love it, it's perfect for a lot of people. And, that's the thing. How do we merge the old guys with the new guys? Because the new guys aren't really into a lot of things like that.
I'm hoping the new cars, because it's almost getting to be. I see a switch is it's almost 50-50 at car shows between the new cars, the Challengers and the Camaros and the Mustangs and the old guys. I just hope that the old cars don't get pushed aside.
It's gonna be harder though. Those cars aren't getting any younger.
No, and the thing of it is like when I was 16, everybody wanted a 55 Chevy, the older guys,
Mhm.
and now the 55 Chevys is not as big as the Camaros, Chevelles, and Mustangs. But before that, it was the brass era cars, the 20s and 30s.
Yeah.
Well, how many people your age wants a 1920s car,
Mhm.
Not a lot. I mean, right now it seems like a lot of people our age are aiming for like the late 80s and up, going with the old Camaros and the Mustangs and stuff like that, because I guess where they got really popular through that one stretch, because the Fox body Mustang's the one you see the most out of any of them on a lot of these younger guys that want to go to old cars. And that's pretty much the extent of what I see. Because I mean, I think I'm kind of a oddball out whenever I go somewhere, because you don't see many young guys driving a car that is almost 3 times his age.
Right, right. And you all know my son, and I told him years ago that my '68 Camaro. I said, when you turn 30, you can have it. And he's like, I don't want it. I'll just sell it. So I just beat him to the punch.
Yeah.
God. I'm gonna have to smack him next time I see him.
Well,
I think.
You see what he drives now. He's got a very different taste and style.
Oh yeah, he's definitely got a little bit of more of a high class car style to him. But I mean, it definitely is. It's not that it's a rare thing anymore to get into the old cars, but it's a selective taste because they're getting expensive. I mean, you can buy a new one for close to the same price and do kind of a little bit more with it than you can with the older ones, because the older ones you're limited to what guys make parts for it.
Right. And you also can drive as a daily driver too.
Yeah,
That's
that's
part of it.
dependency.
Yeah. And well, I'll tell you what 110, 115 miles, it took me a little over half tank of gas.
Mhm.
I mean, it wouldn't come off full on anything else.
Yep.
So, I mean, yeah.
Oh, I got a 10-gallon tank in my Corvette from the previous owner, and I can't go anywhere.
Yeah.
I have to stop for gas, and then it vapor
Pass
locks.
everything but a gas station.
And I've died so many times at gas stations because it gets hot, vapor locks, and then I'm like, come on. So I'm at that point. The new engine's definitely coming down the pipe. So that's my next
Get you
move.
an LS or something.
Yeah, much to Mason's dismay, he likes the romance of the old engines.
Well, and let me say this.
Yeah.
I thought about that with my Firebird
Mhm.
because I said, well, the Pontiac engine costs so much money. I can drop an LS in there, it's faster, more reliable. But in 10, 15 years, that LS motor might look stupid in an old car because, and I tell you why, you guys may or may not know what a tune port injection is.
Not a bit. You have to
Okay.
explain it to me.
All right. A tuned port injection is what they had in the mid '80s in the IROCs and in the Corvettes. Well, it looks like a spaceship engine. I mean, it's really compared to them. Well, I seen one in an old Camaro not too long ago, and it looked so out of place. But back, when if you done that in the '80s, it'd been cool,
Mhm.
and that's why I'm hoping like LS motors.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a weird fit. Like I go over to Street Rod Nationals every year, and like I love seeing the old '70 Mustangs with the 5.0 in them from like the new 18s and 19s. But how's that going to look in 10 or 15 years when that motor becomes pretty much outdated? And who knows, Ford might not even be making a gasoline motor in 5 to 10 years.
When you scratch your head and like, what was this previous guy thinking? Put an old motor in an older car. Oh, well, that might be what it becomes. But uh, ultimately, I'm pretty set on the LS. And I did consider rebuilding my current engine, finding a big block, and all that stuff, and weighed the pros and cons, and um, kind of got a game plan for the future. I would like to eventually take this car for like autocross and stuff.
Oh yeah, go LS.
And just the reliability of it. There's so much documentation on it that I can find lots of information, lots of tools, lots of parts, and so for me, I think it's definitely the right move forward. But I do agree with Mason's sentiments of the older engine and the older car. It is very nice.
Well, and I'm kind of from the group too that I can take a small little Phillips head screwdriver, a pair of pliers, and maybe a hammer if I really need it, and get myself back on the road if I break down. I mean, it's the thing. It's one of three things: you're missing fuel, you're missing air, you're missing spark. If you can't find one of the three, then that's where you got to start looking. If them the old motors, now the new ones, it's kind of what's wrong with my computer? I don't know.
Speaking of being confused, someone getting in who is confused, lost in their project car, where would you recommend they go to find help? Is it a car club? Is it forums online? Is it Facebook groups? I mean, what's the deal?
I'll tell you what, it's forums and it's YouTube. I mean, I've seen so many, on YouTube, I get stuck on something. I didn't have that with my '68, but I mean, now I do. So I mean, I think you'll be fine there. And LS motor, it's kind of like those '80s Mustangs. There's so much aftermarket support for them that you'll be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, it'd be harder. It'd probably be harder to put it like a Boss 302, in something, or or even a Hemi.
They make parts that bolt the LS engine in my car, so for me, I'm pretty set there. It's gonna be pretty easy.
Yeah.
But it's like I said, some people might come in and be a little confused. So YouTube's the biggest resource for those kind of people, is what
That
you
and
would
the
say.
forums, but I'd say YouTube for me anyway.
Yeah.
Most of the Chevy and Dodge guys go over to the LS, but I've noticed too that the Fords, you'll see a lot of the Mustang guys that's got the 65s, the 70s, something like that. They're going over to the 80s and 90s model 5.0 because it's the first one with like the fuel injection and stuff like that. So I guess that's their version of the LS pretty much, is they're going into a more dependable motor by going for that Fox body motor in the older car because it fits. I mean, it's perfect fit for no body modification. That's my big thing that scares me with putting like an LS motor in a car is, are you going to have to do anything to your engine bay to make it fit? Because I'm not a body man. I'll admit that to you right now. I couldn't get you a 100-foot paint job, let alone a 10-footer.
You're more into personality. I get it.
A grinder and a welder do anything. I'm telling
Yeah.
you. But I mean, yeah, fuel injection's great because I mean, this goes for Mustangs. Now, '85 was the last year for a carburetor for a Mustang, and I remember back then, people were leery about getting a fuel injected Mustang in '86, and well, look at it.
Yeah.
Fuel injector's 10 times better.
Yeah. And that also ties into the finding someone to work on your car. These modern cars, all the computer, the tuning is now a huge part of, if you have a fuel injection car and you want to make more power out of it, you have to get it tuned.
Right.
And that's a very different process than it was for a carbureted engine.
And there's some guys out there that are whiz kids with them tuning programs. I wish I had that kind of knowledge, but just like body work, computer work is not my strong suit.
Right. But like you said, the old cars, though, I mean, you look outside, you see puddle of water on the ground, your water pump might be bad, or if you sit there and your fuel pump go bad, it'll dump fuel on the ground. So I mean, it's pretty easy to figure it out.
Leaking power steering or transmission fluid out the gills.
Yeah, it shot me down. It wasn't leaking. It was all on the ground. There was none left by the time I figured out what was going on.
And it's the simplest of stuff too, because I remember when we fixed that, it was is that a hose clamp had loosened up just enough that when pressure built, shot right off. I mean, you thought it was something worse, like it just blew up out of the air.
I thought, oh, this is it. New engine's coming sooner than I thought. And then, nope, it was real easy. And now it's fixed and it doesn't run. But, you know, it is what it is.
Now, I know you go cruising a lot, but do you do a lot of car shows? Or are you kind of sparing with them?
Well, with the 68, I think I went to 3 car shows total in the whole 20-something years I owned the car. When I finished the Firebird, you know, I was proud of it because, I mean, you know, it's different. Like when you buy a car and take it to a show, I mean, you enjoy it, you worked on it, or if you bought it, you know, you worked hard for the money, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when you buy something that doesn't have a dry shaft, it doesn't have an engine, a transmission, wiring harness, or any of that, and the first time you start it, it's just a different feeling.
Yeah, I know. It's one of them things that just it kind of it boggles my mind. But I love the car show scene, really do. You learn a lot. That's where I learned a lot of my stuff from. I mean, I've tried Facebook, I've tried YouTube, and there's some good YouTube guys out there. But when I got tied in with the Mustang Club, that's probably the best thing I could have done because there's guys that have been through the headaches.
Yeah.
And they're trying to save the young guy. But there's some of them that'll let you go ahead and have the headache just so you learn.
Right. Right. Well, and you know, the thing of it is, I think with the Mustang Club, you have a mix of people. And it seems like a lot of the Corvette people I see is mainly new Corvettes. So I don't know how much it's going to help him.
Oh, I'll figure it out for myself. I'm not too concerned. I'm okay with making the mistakes and learning.
It's pretty easy. I mean, especially if you just put like a small block Chevy in there with the HEI. I mean, one wire to the coil. I mean, one wire to the distributor. It's easy.
Yeah. Well, we usually round everything off with one last question. It's the question that kind of stumps some people, but it's a good one. If money was no object, say you won the lottery tonight, what car would you buy or build?
If I was going to buy one, it'd be a Ford GT. Believe it or not, a non-Ford person, it'd be a Ford GT.
Brand new one?
Brand new one.
Yeah.
Or at least a 2005.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty nice. They really are.
Build a car. I've always wanted a 71 CUDA.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the high dollar mark on CUDAs. So that's never going to happen either.
Yeah.
Well, that's why we ask it, is the money being no problem? Because, you know, that's like me. I've always wanted I think it's a 68 GT 350. And, you know, it's a beautiful car to see because they got one in Highland green. It's got the white stripes, the bar for the convertible. That's the only time I really want a convertible in an old car is just for the 68 GT 350.
Right.
Because it's a beautiful, high-priced car. I mean, I just saw one the other day for $200,000. I ain't got a % of that, let alone anywhere close to that.
It's crazy. It's crazy what these cars are going for now.
Mm-hmm. Well, we really appreciate you coming on. This has been Kicking the Tires, and thanks for listening.